Ever get an email where it says, "Hey, hope this email finds you well. I know you're busy, but I just wanted to let you know about some BS service." That email is just so horrible, right? It's not even told you what it is yet and you hate it. You're going to delete it. It's doing all the things wrong. And then the email normally is some super long-winded, big load of junk. You're just not going to read it. You delete it. It just doesn't work. It's terrible. So if you're trying to reach out to someone to get business, to sell something, to work out some kind of deal, to get your seat on the next no return journey to Mars, whatever it might be, if you're sending in a cold email to someone that you don't know, there's a much better way to do that. And that's the short email formula, which I'm about to show you right now. Hey, I'm Chris Munch and welcome to DropServe, where we help you land more agency sales without having to do the actual client work. Okay, and so we're going to look through now at the short cold email formula. Okay, so short being an acronym, each one of these letters stands for something, so it makes it very easy to remember. And you can essentially go through a checklist and make sure that you've done all of these 5 things. If you do these 5 things, you've got a pretty strong email. Okay, so the S in short stands for short. Okay, and that means literally max of 4 sentences. So typically 2 to 4 sentences. Sometimes you can get away with 1 sentence, but normally it's just not enough, right? So you normally need at least a couple of sentences. So you're looking really here at 2 to 4 sentences, 1 to 2 paragraphs, right? That's all it is. Now, why should it be so short? What is the reason for it being so short? There's a few different reasons. One is attention span, right? So if you write a lot of stuff, they're probably not going to read it anyway. So it's not the only reason. There's a bigger reason. And it's really looking at what happens if you do the opposite. So if you write a long message, okay, so a long message does 2 things. Number 1, puts people off from reading it in the first place. Because if they see an essay sent to them, they either go, I don't want to read it, or I don't want to read it right now. It looks interesting, but I don't want to read it right now, so I'll come back to it. And guess what they never do in an environment where, hundreds of people are gunning for their attention. It's on their phone. There's lots of distractions, right? They're checking the email on their phone, on their computer, where there's thousands of distractions. Guess what they're never going to do? They're never going to come back. So having something that's long tends to put them off reading it in the first place. And therefore, you just get ignored, okay, by default, even if they were interested. Secondly, is that it essentially makes you look needy. If you have the time to write out a very, very long message to a company or to an individual, the longer that email gets, the more it shows that you've put a huge amount of time into it, which makes you look needy, okay? It shows that you need something or you wouldn't have put that amount of time into it. And it also shows that you're not busy. And by not being busy and having a lot of time on your hands, you're probably not so useful in the first place, right? And so you kind of signal this low status. So long in an initial contact signals a lower status. Now, there might be some reasons why you might do a longer email in the first instance, where there might be certain situations in life where it might make sense to write a longer email and it might be justified. And there might be other reasons that you've done a long email other than, say, being low status and being needy and having too much free time on your hands. But when you're trying to make a sale, right, it signals that because you're essentially having a commercial conversation, there's an intent for them to buy something from you, then already you're in a lower status position, and it amplifies that low status position with the message being long because you want them to do something, right? Because you need the sale. And so by writing a long message, you signify that you're not busy with clients and that you really need their business and you're really trying to persuade them. And so that puts you in a weak position and them in a strong position. And then with already the situation being that, you're going through a sales process and they feel empowered, it only aggravates that situation and essentially encourages them either just to ignore you because they just think that you're not worth it because you're too desperate, you're trying too hard, or that they push back on you very aggressively because you sent such a long message. They feel that they can just abuse your time, so it sends the wrong message, okay? And so you don't want to come across needy. You don't want to come across desperate. You don't want to come across like you've got loads of time on your hands, and you also want to, respect that they are busy and need kind of a quick summary of the information. You've got a short chance to capture attention, and so that's why it should be short. Okay, so it's a simple concept, but many people miss it and they start writing essays. But it's really important to understand the reasons behind why short is so important. Okay, so short is the first thing in the short acronym for cold email. Okay, and so the second one then is H, which is about the hook. Okay, so if you mentioned that that you need to have a good subject line, you need to have a good hook, you need to grab their attention. This is something else it needs. It can't just be, a plain generic email or sound like everyone else or sound like something that they've heard, hundreds of times before. They're just going to skip past it. So you need a unique and interesting hook that grabs attention. Okay, and this is pretty self-explanatory, so we don't need to spend any longer with this, and it ties in with one of the other 5 rules here. So then O, in short, is observation or opportunity. It could be either. So an observation is like a statement about their business, about their industry, about their products. And so you're saying something about their business, their industry, or their products. Because if you say something about someone, think about it. If someone comes up to you and asks you a question in the street and says, "Hey, where are you from?" Right? You might just say, "Hey, I'm busy," or just say, "Hey, no," and just carry on, right? But if someone makes a statement and says, "You are from X place," if they are right, you'd be curious, how did they know? What was it that gave it away? Or and if they were wrong, you'd want to correct them. So by making a statement, right, an observation, whether it's right or wrong, it tends to encourage the business owner or the person on the other end of the message to respond and, with either curiosity about how you knew that, or essentially to disagree with you. And the whole point of these initial emails is to get that initial engagement, right? And so the observation, one, is it makes it feel a lot more personal, and then it tends to get them to respond, okay? And now if you're sending these messages out en masse, you can't have an observation specific to the business, but you can cold read the businesses in general. So what do I mean by that? So for example, if they're a dentist, you could say, "I've noticed that you appear to be getting more, let's say, teeth whitening patients at this time," right? Because that might be something that's just happening in the industry. And now they're either going to say, "How do you know this?" or "Where are you getting your information from?" Right? Or "No, that's not true." Okay, but any engagement is better than none, and then you can always move on from that point. Okay, and you'll see this in an example in a moment to understand what this means. Okay, and it could just be an observation about the industry that they may agree or disagree with, or it's going to be about a unique opportunity that is different to their typical thing that they hear. And again, these observations and the opportunity, it ties in with the hook. And the observation about their business can also be related to an opportunity. "Hey, I noticed that you're selling more teeth whitening or getting more teeth whitening patients at the moment. However, you don't appear for teeth whitening San Diego," for example, right? And so then you're combining those together. Okay, so you have an observation or an opportunity in there as well. And you could do this specific to the business if it's one-on-one outreach, or you can make this more general to your niche. Okay. Now, the fourth one is make the email so they can respond easily with a yes. It's a micro commitment when they say yes, it's a positive answer, and it's a simple thing where it's a yes or no question, right? You're not saying, "Hey, how much money do you make?" which they might have resistance to because they don't want to share it with a stranger. You're not asking them, what service they want to sell or what location, right, that they want to work in. It's very early on in the interaction where they feel that maybe they're being baited into a sales conversation, having to kind of say yes to something that they don't agree with. You want to make it very, very easy to respond with a yes. And that also means making it very non-committal. So let me know if you are interested. Interested doesn't mean want, it just means curious. So a phrase like, "Let me know if you might be interested," and I add the word "might be interested" to make it even less of a commitment for them, right? But once they respond with that yes, and the more responses that you get, it improves your deliverability. But also every conversation that you start is one that you can close. If they never respond, because you make it a bit more of a commitment or too difficult or too complicated, right? You ask them a complicated question that they have to think of the answer to, then it's too difficult. If you said, what's your top 5 services that you sell? They have to sit down and think about that. It's not easy. You want it where they're just scanning through their email, okay, very, very quickly, and they can just see what it is. It's very, very short, a quick opportunity, and it's like, hey, are you interested? And then they can say yes. Okay. So respond easily with a yes, the simplest way to do it. Okay. And then the final one, which most people forget and is critically important, or if they don't forget it, they do it in such a lazy way, right? That really isn't specific to their niche, that you must make this very, very specific to the client's business and industry, and the email and the message very specific, showing insider knowledge that calls out their industry, their niche, their services in a very, very precise way. We've done this very, very lightly in the initial messaging because you don't know the niche very well. So we just say, hey, we can get you more teeth whitening clients in San Diego, right? Which is then customized for a dentist. And so you say, okay, well, that's tailored to their niche. So that's really just a starting point. But if you really, really, really demonstrated super precise knowledge of their industry, right? And you said, I've noticed that you now offer a very specific type of teeth whitening service, right? Or treatment, which is brand new in 2024. We have more patients waiting for this, which we could connect you with? Would you be interested? Because you're mentioning such a specific brand new service that maybe only industry insiders know about, right? That's going to grab their attention. And if they don't offer it, they would correct you and say, hey, we don't offer this yet, but we don't offer it because it has this negative thing, right? But then you've got the conversation started. So this tailoring to their niche means going ultra, ultra specific, okay? So not like saying, hey, do you want more residential solar leads, right? Or solar installation leads? It's, hey, do you want ground mount solar installation for commercial projects? Okay, so getting very, very precise, very specific in how you tailor it to that niche. Okay, and so this is a short cold email formula. So keep it short, have a strong hook, mention observation or an opportunity, or an observation that is an opportunity. Make it easy to respond with a yes, and it's tailored to their niche.